back to another video. It's me, Pugs Official, and today we're going to be looking at my top 20 favorite horror movies, which, yes. Okay, so my number 20 pick is Carrie. So for this first one, we have Carrie from 1976. Carrie is about this girl who, after getting her period, discovers that she has these telekinetic powers, which let her pretty much just kill everyone who has tried bullying her entire life. And when she goes to prom, she thinks she's finally found happiness, but what she finds out really is that everyone was trying to play a sick prank on her, and stuff starts going haywire, and she starts murdering everyone at the prom. I love this movie personally. It's one of my favorite Stephen King movies, maybe one of my third or fourth favorite adaptations of a Stephen King movie. And this one has a personal spot in my heart because it was one of my first ever favorite horror movies. Obviously, we've moved from the top 10 now, but before it was in my top 5 when I had barely been introduced to horror, maybe 2 months into loving horror, which barely happened about 2 years ago. So yeah, barely found out about this movie 2 years ago, and it's in my top 20 now. How exciting. For me personally, my number 15 spot is Phantasm. I barely found out about this movie a few weeks ago, but I loved it so much. It's about this guy, that tall guy, and he's called the Tall Man, and he takes dead bodies, and at first no one knows, but then, spoiler alert, he uses those bodies and makes little minions that help him. This movie was such a fun ride the whole way through, and those brain suckers are they're called Sentinels. They're the highlight of the franchise. They bring all the gore, and this movie personally also had kind of a soft feeling. I don't know when I say soft, but this movie just kicked a lot of ass, and it was great, personally, in my opinion. For some reason, this is one of those underrated movies that I know not a lot of people have seen, so please, if you have the time, I really recommend that you watch Phantasm. number 10 pick for me personally is Pet Sematary. A lot of people didn't really enjoy this movie, but the first time I watched it, to be honest, I did not enjoy it either. But around the second time that I watched it, I really just enjoyed this movie. A lot of the scenes were great, and just the scares, and that one scene where the little boy just gets hit with that truck, that literally just messed me up. And this movie is great, though a lot of people don't think it is, but personally I just really enjoy it. It has a soft spot for me, and between this movie and my number 9, it's just a hundredth of a centimeter. That's how good this movie is. And number 5 for me is The Silence of the Lambs. I watched this movie, and at first I didn't really get it. Then I just gave it a rewatch, and I was just going to be a background thing. But then as soon as I saw the first clip, I instantly fell in love with this movie. This movie was great, and it had some amazing scenes, one of which is the scene that you're about to see right now. This movie, it has some great characters with Anthony Hopkins playing Hannibal Lecter, and I don't know the other actor's name, but he plays Buffalo Bill. And this movie has some weird stuff, but it's mostly just a great movie all around, and I suggest you should really give it a watch if you're just looking for a good, not really gory, but kind of gory, and just suspenseful time. It's not too comedic, which I really enjoy about this movie. Because, like, why would a movie that they're trying to make so scary be comedic? This movie is great in a lot of ways, and this is a classic. The sequels and the originals, I haven't watched them, but I heard they're not as good. But I heard they're still pretty good, so I'll try and give them a watch, and then maybe I can even rank all of the Hannibal or the Silence of the Lambs movies from worst to best. And yeah, if you can, go and stream The Silence of the Lambs. And my number 3 pick is A Nightmare on Elm Street 3: Dream Warriors. This movie, I give it an edge over the original because this movie it was better. It had better effects, it had more like action, and I liked a lot of the characters. This movie, I just really enjoyed it. I had a good time. it was also going to be a background watch. A lot of these were supposed to be just background watches, but only number 2 wasn't going to be a background watch, but the rest of them kind of were. So, like, most of these movies I fell in love with, but this one was one of the best background watches that I got to see in recent times, because it just had a soft spot in my heart, because believe it or not, I watched this movie on Christmas, so I just liked it more. And on to number 3. My number 3 favorite horror movie is Phantasm 2. I barely heard about this movie like 3 weeks ago, and I'm watching the whole entire Phantasm movies. I think you're gonna get a kill count on these in like November or sometime around then. But for now, you can just have this, and later in like October, you'll have my personal reviews for these. And this movie I really enjoyed, even though I just watched it like 2 weeks ago. And this movie, just like Phantasm 1, I was really hoping for it. I thought it wouldn't be as good as the original, but I was wrong. This movie had all of the comedic beats, all of the scariness of the original, and it even had more action. So this movie also holds a special place in my heart, because the Phantasm series, I feel, is very underrated, and James LeGros, who plays Mike, I feel he's better in this movie, even though he's only in the second one. All the other ones he's played by A. Michael Baldwin, and James LeGros only plays him in the second movie, and I feel like he gives a way better performance than A. Michael Baldwin. And yeah, this movie holds a special place in my heart, and it's great, really. My number 2 pick is 1982's The Thing, made by John Carpenter, who made Halloween and Christine. This movie, I feel, is really underrated, but not really at the same time. A lot of people know about it, but not a lot of people talk about it personally, from what I've seen. And this movie got backlash for how gory it was. And personally, I really enjoyed this. This was like a first time watch for me in like last year or something. So I watched it again in preparation, because the last time I watched it was like my 5th or 4th favorite. So I rewatched it, and it jumped a few spots just because of how smart all the characters are and all the great practical effects in this movie. The practical effects are amazing. The characters are great with what they're given, and they're very smart, especially leading man Mac. And I just really enjoyed this movie for what it had, and also the gore is just on point. You don't get a movie with this much gore. And my number 1 favorite horror movie of all time is CoComelon. CoComelon is my number 1 favorite horror movie ever, because, I'm just playing, but my number 1 favorite is Scream. Scream is my favorite horror movie, because it just has some great comedic beats. It revived horror history, and this movie was just great. Not really the first time that I watched it, but the second time, I fell in love with this movie. This movie was great. I was hearing such good things about it, and this movie also holds a special place in my heart, because I don't know if it was Carrie or this one, but both of those movies got me into horror. So I'm thankful for this movie. It holds a very special place in my heart, and the kills are pretty good at times, but it has comedic beats, it has great acting, and just all around a really great horror movie. I really suggest that you go watch Scream wherever you can. It's great, and I hope that everyone has the same experience with this movie that I did, but I know everyone's opinions are different, so you might not have the same experience as me, but that's okay. And if you're not into horror, I hope this movie gets you into horror. Got me into horror, and I think it also got one of my family members into horror. So yeah, I love this movie. So yeah, that's all for my personal ranking. If you don't agree with some of the movies on this list, that's okay. We can all talk about it in the comments. Put your top 20 favorites in the comments. And if you don't know what your top 20 favorites are, just put your top 10 or your top 5 or even your favorite or your top 3. Anything goes well. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, subscribe, and leave a comment saying what should I improve on and what I should keep doing. And next week, oh, you're in for the ride. Because next week, we are looking at the Leprechaun movies. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day, and goodbye.